Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, that behold, the place was a place for cattle. The children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spake unto Moses and to Eleazar the priest, and unto the princes of the congregation, saying, Adaroth and Dibon and Jazer and Nimrah and Heshbon and Elealeh and Shebam and Nebo and Beon, even the country which the Lord smote before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle, and thy servants have cattle. Wherefore said they, If we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession, and bring us not over Jordan. And Moses said unto the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, Shall your brethren go to war, and shall ye sit here? And wherefore discourage ye the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord hath given them? Thus did your fathers, when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For when they went up unto the valley of Eshcol, and saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel, that they should not go into the land which the Lord had given them. And the Lord's anger was kindled the same time, and he sware, saying, Surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. Save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed the Lord. And the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord was consumed. And behold, ye are risen up in your father's stead, an increase of sinful men, to augment yet the fierce anger of the Lord toward Israel. For if you turn away from after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness, and ye shall destroy all this people. And they came near unto him and said, We will build sheepfolds here for our cattle, and cities for our little ones. But we ourselves will go ready armed before the children of Israel, until we have brought them unto their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fenced cities, because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return unto our houses, unto the children of Israel, have inherited every man his inheritance. For we will not inherit with them on yonder side Jordan, or forward, because our inheritance is fallen to us on this side Jordan eastward. And Moses said unto them, If ye will do this thing, if ye will go armed before the Lord to war, and will go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord, until he hath driven out his enemies from before him, and the land be subdued before the Lord, then afterward ye shall return, and be guiltless before the Lord and before Israel. And this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Build your cities for your little ones, and folds for your sheep, and do that which hath proceeded out of your mouth. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben spake unto Moses, saying, Thy servants will do as my Lord commanded. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our cattle shall be there in the cities of Gilead. But thy servants will pass over, every man armed for war, before the Lord to battle, as my Lord saith. So concerning them Moses commanded Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the chief fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel. And Moses said unto them, If the children of Gad and the children of Reuben will pass with you over Jordan, every man armed to battle, before the Lord, and the land shall be subdued before you, then ye shall give them the land of Gilead for a possession. But if they will not pass over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, As the Lord hath said unto thy servants, so will we do. We will pass over armed before the Lord into the land of Canaan, that the possession of our inheritance on this side Jordan may be ours. And Moses gave unto them even to the children of Gad, and to the children of Reuben, and unto half the tribe of Manasseh the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land with the cities thereof in the coasts, even the cities of the country round about. And the children of Gad built Dibon, and Ataroth, and Aror, and Ataroth, Shopham, and Jazer, and Jogbehah, and Beth Nimrah, and Beth Haran, fenced cities and folds for sheep. And the children of Reuben built Heshbon, and Eliah, and Kirjathim, and Nebo, and Baalimeon, their names being changed, and Shibmah, and gave other names unto the cities which they builded. And the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, and took it, and dispossessed the Amorite which was in it. And Moses gave Gilead unto Machir, the son of Manasseh, and he dwelt therein. And Jair, the son of Manasseh, went and took the small towns thereof, and called them Havoth Jair. And Nobah went and took Canath, and the villages thereof, and called it Nobah, after his own name. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you that we're able to come to church today, Lord, and I pray that you would bless the service, Lord, bless our pastor as he comes before us to preach Numbers chapter 32. And Lord, I pray that you just fill him with your spirit, Lord. I pray that you would you speak with power and fervency, Lord, and that if there's any sin we've committed this week or even today, Lord, that your Holy Spirit would convict us, Lord, and that we would get that right and keep short accounts with you so we can grow closer to you, and that we won't harden our hearts today, Lord, and we won't quench the Spirit or grieve it, Lord. And I just pray that you'd help us to realize the importance of coming to church, Lord, and how important it is in our own lives. And Lord, and it's not only church that helps us grow, but it's also reading our Bibles and praying on our own time and having a personal, intimate, passionate relationship with you. And I pray that you bless the service, Lord, bless the day. Thank you for the weather, Lord. I pray you just help us to do your will. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, Numbers chapter 32. The children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spake unto Moses, said to Eleazar the priest, and unto the princes of the congregation, saying, Ashtaroth and Dibon, and Jazer and Nimrah, and Heshbon, and Elah, and Shebam, and Nebo, and Beon, even the country which the Lord smote before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle. Is a land for cattle, and thy servants have cattle. Oh, that seems like a good combination, right? You got a land for cattle, and you got cattle. Put them together, you know. This kind of reminds me of that crazy song that people are singing, apple, pineapple, apple, pineapple. So anyway, that's probably not popular anymore, but that was a silly song. But they saw the land, and they saw, hey, this would be the best land for us. You remember the spies spied up land where everybody should go. But they saw here that there was land that was not in the promised land, but it was close to the promised land that was for them, that they could use it. They could use their skills and the things that they had in order to subjugate the land, but yet it was not the promised land. And the question here arises, of course, remember when we studied who shall receive an inheritance in chapters 26 and 27 of Numbers. We talked about how that there were primarily the people that were fit to go forth into battle. Those who were able to win the land. Those who were able to also, once they inherited a place in the land, that they would grow crops, and then they would have a threshing floor, and then they would use the land to produce crops, and they would use the land to do those things. And then so that would be the primary person who would receive an inheritance. And in order to help that person to best raise up a family for the Lord and best make the land holy, that main primary group would receive the land, but then there would be supporting people coming along, their families, the people that were within their homes that would support them the best they could, so that the home would be secure and productive while they went out to work the land. And then you would have the people that were there spiritually and so forth that were there. They weren't working the land directly, and they didn't have an inheritance directly, but they received of them in order to help them improve their ability to work the land. All right, so we have this picture of in the New Testament, this being a picture of the New Testament, how that the primary person, the primary soul winner, is going to be receiving an inheritance with the Lord. He will be, the soul winner will be the person who goes knocking the doors, the person that goes winning souls. He that winneth souls is wise. Those who go and buy and sell and get gain in the land that they live in, those people will be the primary inheritors in the kingdom to come. But in addition to them, there would be their supporting families, the people that were not as productive, that were put underneath them. Remember the servant that lost his talent and so forth, put underneath them perhaps, and different things like that too, because they ruled over people and so forth. And so, and then there was also like the Levite. He was a picture of the pastors and the people that were there to enhance their spiritual life, to enhance their growth. Being a picture of the pastors today in the New Testament that are using their ability to help you grow your family spiritually and giving you that expertise that you normally want to be able to do. But you as the primary soul winner would be the one that goes out and saving souls, producing a crop of righteousness, if you will, for the Lord in society. And so that was basically the grassroots guy who goes door knocking. The family helps give him the ability to go forth and do those things for the Lord. And then the pastors giving them spiritual ability, giving them that Great Commission training so that they can as well be prepared to raise their family for the Lord, and then also to win souls for them in their local communities. But then there's also another group that we see here coming up, is that somebody, remember in the previous chapters, we had looked and we saw how that they had finally, as a nation, they had won victory over several different things. They had conquered the Moabites. The Moabites were a picture of compromised Christians, Christians that compromised with the world. These Christians in chapter 32 and the ones that we talked about in 27 and 26, they had conquered the compromise in their life. They had conquered the Moabites, and then they had also conquered the Midianites, those hidden sins within, those sins of the flesh. They had conquered those, and they had given them up. And then they saw, and finally, just before they're about ready to move into the promised land, there's this one final group that they have fixed the compromise in their life. They're no longer compromised. They've fixed the flesh in their life. They're no longer lusting after the flesh, and they've subjugated him and the flesh, and they are living that godly life as all Christians ought to live. And yet they've decided not to go into the land as inheritors because they have a different interest. See, the main inheritor of the Christian community is the average guy in the seats, the average man in the seats, that goes soul winning and raises his family for the Lord. Those will be the ones who inherit a possession in the Lord's land, and everybody else supports that. But then there's another group considered what I would like to say is secular Christians, if you will. Christians that they're not focused, their primary focus is not being members in the church. You know, and local church would be that place where the men would raise their families and they would get education from the pastors and so forth to go forth and make a great society, a righteous society, a society that can bring forth fruit unto the Lord. But then there's other supporting groups that oftentimes, at first look, you may be asking, why are you putting your efforts and your energies into business or into politics or into to something that is not like that primary inheritor, and not necessarily directly helping that primary inheritor to receive the land. And so the question is, these people that don't center their primary energies around the local church, around supporting that primary inheritor, these people that they decide to go off in some other career, some other business that takes their energies away from the local church, if you will, or at first glance may do that. The question is, are these people giving up their inheritance? Are these people discouraging those primary inheritors and so forth? And so they saw ideal grazing lands. They saw lands where they could put their efforts to better use than they could see within the promised land. And so oftentimes you have people that that they don't have a problem with the flesh. They don't have a problem with compromise. But their problem lies in their desire to serve the Lord or not. Some people, they raise their families properly. They do all those things that are right, but they have not become that battle-hardened man that is willing to go in, fight the battles, and inherit a land. Because they're focused on something else. Rather than soul winning, they're focused on business. Rather than soul winning, they're focused on politics, or they're focused on some other primary thing that at first glance does not look like a local inheritor, a man who's going into battle. Because a Christian in the Great Commission is supposed to be this person who has purified his flesh in order for it to be filled with the Spirit, so that they can go forth and witness for the Lord. They are to do God's ministry on this earth. They're supposed to be Christ-like. They're supposed to be little Christians. They're supposed to go forth and minister on behalf of Christ as He ministers in heaven for us. But there are some Christians that they've cleansed their vessel. They've gotten rid of compromise. They've gotten rid of their fleshly lust, and they've subjugated that. But they are not necessarily going forth to battle for the Lord in ministry in some form. The local Christian is supposed to, even if they're not in full-time ministry as a Levite would, they would still have to work the land and do those door knocking, do those things as a faithful Christian member ought to be doing in raising his family for the Lord, getting them saved, getting his neighborhood saved, getting those people saved, and then therefore bringing forth the harvest into the Lord's barn, being the picture of the church. And a lot of picture going on here, but the question is, and then also James kind of gives this picture of, let's go ahead and get into it. He says in verse 1, "Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle, and when they saw the land of Jasser and the land of Gilead, that behold, it was a place for cattle." They saw an area where they could excel in. There are some people that they can excel in business. They can excel in politics. They can excel in different areas. They can excel as a celebrity, if you will. They want to go into Hollywood. They want to be a Christian actor. They want to be a Christian musician. They don't want to have that grassroots Christian ministry serving just on the streets. Now, a lot of Christians that are businessmen, and a lot of celebrities, and a lot of business people and such like, they do ministry. They raise their family for the Lord, but their primary focus at first glance does not look like one of service in the Lord's ministry and so forth. But the question Moses is having here, you're not focused on that local church style of ministry, grassroots and stuff, so what makes you different than the unbelievers, those who did not want to enter the land? He says in verse 5, they asked Moses and Eleazar, see, they're not in rebellion against the leadership of the church, but they say, "If we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession." They want to possess that. They want to inherit that. They don't necessarily want to live that grassroots type of ministry in the land as a farmer. They don't want to be well, they're a rancher over here, but and so forth. But in this picture I'm giving you, they don't necessarily want to have that victorious Christian life in the promised land as it's laid out. But they do want to serve the Lord, but not necessarily in that capacity. He says in verse 5, he says, "Bring us not over Jordan." For many years they desired to go over the Jordan. They desired to go into the promised land, but now they're saying, we've taken care of everything in our lives and we're about ready to come over, but we don't want to go over. There are some Christians that they are Christians, they are part of the kingdom, but they're just not in that battle, if you will. They're not gone into war. And so the question is, what will you do in that business? What will you do as a celebrity? What will you do as a secular politician or whatever? How are you going to use not being directly in the battle, not being directly in the land, as that victorious Christian life is typically laid out in who will inherit the land? what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be a complacent Christian? Are you going to discourage the people that are trying to live a Christ-like ministry locally? Are you going to be a discouragement to them? In verse 6 it says, "Shall your brethren go to war, and shall ye sit here?" Shall all of the Christians in this world go try to live their life in sacrifice and ministry and raising the children for the Lord and doing all those things while you excel in business and act as a celebrity and on TV and be a politician and do all those different things that are not necessarily Christ-like and focus on eternity? Are you just going to hang out and do what you want to do in life? See, there's a lot of Christians that they're not morally corrupt necessarily. They're not necessarily compromised on doctrine, but their efforts, their job, what they want to do in life is not necessarily centered around that victorious Christian life. And so the question is, will those people who are focused on something secular like that, will they discourage the children of Israel? In verse 6 it says, "Wherefore discourage ye the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which the Lord had given them." You know, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Why are you going off being a secular businessman? Why are you going off into politics? Why are you going off into being a celebrity, figurehead, or some sort of thing that God has not necessarily called for a person living the victorious Christian life? Why are you doing those things? You don't have a problem with the flesh, but yet you want to put your energies to something else. See, he says, "Shall your brethren go to war and ye sit here?" To not do the battle, to not do the fight. See, every Christian ought to be in the fight. Every Christian ought to be in the battle of winning this world to the Lord. But here they are focusing their energies on something else other than that. So the victorious Christian life is one of men prepared for battle. Here they're prepared for battle, but they're not battling for the Lord. They're battling for some secular sort of thing. Something they'd rather put their energies toward rather than directly saving souls, directly doing all those things that the typical Christian is supposed to be doing. And so he says, so here is Moses wanted to know, why did they want to sit there? Why did they want to go there and not go into the promised land? Why did they not want to organize their battles, their efforts into the Christian life and raising directly? And obviously, a secular Christian does raise their family properly. They ought to do all those things. They ought to go to church. They ought to do those things. But at the end of the day, when you have the ability to focus your energies, do you do that door knocking, or do you do that something else? Do you do that soul winning, or what do you do with your energies? And these guys decided, hey, instead of doing it directly day in and day out with the local church, we're going to do it some other way. We're not going to do it in that victorious Christian life. And so he says, basically, if you're saved and you're a Christian, still living, if you're still living on this earth, God has a purpose for you in ministry, in somehow. Because if you got saved, the reason why you're still on this earth is to buy and sell and get gain for the Lord, and not necessarily for yourself. Otherwise, he would just take you home to heaven, and your journey's done. You got saved. You made the right choice. Go to heaven, and wait it out. You know, that would have what he would have done, but he doesn't. He keeps us alive and lets us stay here and to continue ministry as in walking in newness of life, a picture of walking in life of Christ. So if you're saved and a Christian and still living, then you should be in the war and not content to just sit around. I'm just going to wait it out, you know. I'm not really bad, but I'm not really good. And I got in my napkin that talent the Lord gave me, you know, and just sitting there ready, waiting for Him. I can't wait. I'm so excited to give this back to the Lord. He gave it to me. Now I'm going to give it back to the Lord. And that would be sitting around. James would give he says that type of attitude, he says, would be discouraging. He feared that their attitude would keep the other tribes from doing the same thing. Well, these guys, they're not doing the victorious Christian life. Why should we go into the land and battle all those? We already got land here that we dispossess people here. Why don't we just all live over here and not go into that Christian life? No, Christ died for us. We're all saved. We've had victory over the flesh. Why do we need to go and fight the battles? Why do we need to be public and condemn sin in the flesh? Why do we have to go do that? We're doing it ourselves in our Christian community. Why do we have to go convince the naysayers and convince the local people and fight those battles and get bloody if we can just live and raise our family here? Why don't we as Christians not be salt and light? Why don't we just keep it in the church? Why don't we just not try to influence other people for Christ as long as we are raising our kids properly? We are having our own communities. Why can't we just spend our energies on things that people enjoy, like politics and so forth, and that can make a just society, but not necessarily for the Lord? Why do we have to do that? If and the Calvinists try to say, well, everything's all preordained anyway. We just have to make people righteous, and because they're already saved or lost. So no, that's not the way the Lord works. So he asked them, your complacency is going to discourage people from being fervent for the Lord. And James in his book puts it this way, is like, people like this that are complacent in their Christian life, they've had victory over the flesh, they've had victory over compromise, they had all those things, but their faith without works is dead. Their faith not put to the Lord's use is dead. They themselves are saved. They themselves are prepared for the Lord to come. But they have not gone into the battle. They're just sitting around waiting for the Lord to return. You've seen a lot of people like that, right? They're just saying, well, I'm saved, and what you believe, you can believe. I'm not going to try to convince you one way or another, and Jesus is going to come soon, and I'm just waiting on Him. Even so, Lord, come, Jesus, and that's all they're doing in life. They're just buying and selling and living life, waiting for the Lord to return. And the people at church or the people at work don't know that they're Christians. They don't know that what they believe and everything. And a lot of Christians, when you ask them, are you 100% sure you're going to heaven? Yes, but those questions are personal questions. I'm not going to talk to you about those. You've seen a lot of Christians like that? Mm-hmm. They feel as if their testimony is a private thing between them and the Lord. And they're just sitting around. Why sit ye here? Why don't you get into the battle like you're supposed to be? Why are you going off in these directions? And in this sense, what Moses is doing here, and we need to understand this very carefully, is that complacency in a Christian who does not speak up about salvation and ministry in some form, is a person who is saved, but their faith, their works, without works, is dead. Their faith without works is dead. And there are a lot of Christians that are sitting around discouraging the work of the Lord, not because they are compromised Christians necessarily, not because they are corrupt in the flesh. They are living their life morally. They serve the Lord. They go to church. They raise their families righteously, and they live that good Christian life. That basically that 1950s nuclear family where they go to church on Sunday and then they live their life the rest of the day. It's like in those movies, you would see them going to church, but you would never hear them speaking to their friends about what they had heard at church. It was just part of a good Christian life. And everybody there in that 1950s style of era would live and dress modestly, and they would have that Christian lifestyle, but you would never hear in those movies or in the stories or anything about them witnessing to their friends. Like the Beaver did not go up to Eddie and Leave It to Beaver and say, "Hey, Eddie, did you know that if you accepted Christ, you wouldn't have all these crazy problems you're having in this life?" They would not. But they would go to church every Sunday. You see what I'm saying is that a lot of Christians live life like that. They're good, moral Christians, but you would never hear them witnessing. You would never hear them trying to buy and sell and get gain for the Lord to occupy until He comes. You would just see them sitting around, living their own life, putting their energies to their own life. Oh, little Johnny needs to go to college. Little Johnny needs to do all these things, and they're all in secular things, and they live Christian lives internally, but not externally. They're not lights on a hill. They're not a city that cannot be hid. They're not salt and light. They are salt and light for their own family. They shake it out wherever to make them morally good, but not necessarily as a nation for the Lord. It says, "Wherefore discourage ye the heart of the children of Israel from going over to the land which the Lord had given them." This is what you need to do. You have to minister on behalf of Christ. Faith without works is dead, as it is the same effect that unbelief has on the world around us. See, the unbeliever, he lives a moral life. He lives the life that he's surrounded by. If he lives in a corrupt society, he's a corrupt person. If the unbeliever who lives in a moral society is a moral person, but they're lost, they're not going to heaven, they're living for themselves or living for the devil. But a person who's saved, but is complacent, sits around and doesn't do anything, it outwardly, obviously they themselves are saved, they have the talent from the Lord. The only difference between the complacent Christian and the unbelieving is that the unbelieving is going to hell and the complacent Christian is going to heaven. You have what is thine, Lord. You created me, I'm yours, but don't expect me to buy and sell and get gain. So basically, he says, shall your brethren go to war and shall you sit here? You see, just because they wanted to do their own thing did not relieve them of the responsibility of fighting the Christian battle. And so that's what Moses is talking to them about. You want to live life outside of the victorious Christian life, you're going to discourage those people that are trying to do that Christian life in the way that we described in the previous chapters of Numbers 26 and 27. See, in verse 9, he gives the example of their fathers who did not inherit the land. They discouraged the heart of the children of Israel. And are you going to do the same? He's interrogating them. He's asking them. See, secular living but morally good and disciplined Christians will discourage believers. They will think, oh, I can live that way without having to confront people about salvation, without having to confront people about going to heaven and living righteous lives and stuff. As long as they don't bother me, they can live however they want, and I'm not going to confront it. You see, they discourage believers from walking in a deeper and further with the Lord and that are actively fighting the spiritual battle of Christ. They say, well, if I don't have to get bloody, and they're not getting bloody, why do I have to get bloody? Well, basically, we need to ask ourselves to not discourage those people that are living the victorious Christian life, even if we aren't. We have to find a way that if we've decided to live on the other side of Jordan, then we have to live in such a way that does not discourage our brothers that are in the fight and are fighting the battle. And we should not give up our responsibility to help them in winning this world for Christ. See, in verse 11 it says, because they, the unfaithful, have not wholly followed me. If you're not wholly following me, and the unfaithful that did not inherit the land were not wholly following me, you see how that you're going to look the same as the world? James deals with this very, very, very eloquently when he tells us faith without works is dead, is that it doesn't matter if you're saved and going to heaven if outwardly everybody looks and sees that you look almost like a moral, unsaved person. What's the difference? If I can live as a saved Christian like the world, then why do I have to go off this? Why can't I live like a Lot? Why do I have to live like an Abraham who's separated from the world? Why can't I just live like a Lot inside and enjoy my life? Enjoy going to Walmart, enjoy going to all these places, enjoy working and growing my family without having to fight those battles. See, when we have not wholly followed the Lord, we are much more likely to be influenced by the carnal and discouraging lives around us. Verse 15, it says, for if we turn away from after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness. You see, that that generation of unbelief, this new generation, they all died off, and except for Joseph or Joshua and Caleb, they all died off. But what Moses is telling them, he's saying, hey, you need to understand something. Just because you're not part of the old generation of unbelief does not mean that God will not leave you here as well. If you're going to be just like that generation of unbelief, then God is going to also keep you from going to the promised land. Just like even though Lot was saved, his life was destroyed just like the rest of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, he wasn't destroyed with them, but he basically, the Moabites became compromised, the Midianites, they all basically fell away because of his compromised position in life. he says in verse 15, he says, if you go down that route of discouraging and sitting around, not doing anything for the Lord, you shall destroy all this people. Your complacency as a Christian will destroy your church. Your complacency as a Christian will destroy the Christian community around you. Your discouragement will destroy them just as the 10 unfaithful spies destroyed the previous generation with their evil reports. A complacent report of inactivity and uncaringness will compromise the same as one of evil. When their complacency began to affect their brothers and sisters, it must be confronted. Even though you can live your own life the way you want, if you're going to affect others, you need to confront that. You need to stop that. Stop it in its tracks. So that's the question he proposed to them. Why do you want to go off and live secular life? Why do you want to go off, become a celebrity? I don't know if that's the word. A celebrity or a business person or something that is not conducive directly towards living a Christian life. You didn't see Jesus going off in politics. You didn't see Jesus going off trying to become a celebrity. In fact, he had to leave a bit of times to hide himself. He hid himself from them and so forth. And you didn't see Jesus trying to go off and do all these secular things and stuff. But so why should we? So that's this question proposed to them. Will your complacency be seen as unbelief by everybody else and discourage them from living the Christian life? See, you can do whatever you want. You can get 10 talents and gain 10 more talents, or you can get 5 talents and gain 5 more talents, or you can just give your money to the exchangers. If you don't want to use your talent for the Lord, don't just leave it in a napkin. Give it to the people. Give your energies to the people that will do directly the work. So we see in this picture, in verse 17, it says, "We ourselves will go ready, armed before the children of Israel, until we have brought them unto their place." So the secular Christian, if you will, the celebrity, the politician, the businessman, what they need to do with their energies, with their efforts, if they desire to go off into those fields, they're allowed to. If somebody says, "Hey, you know, that talent you gave me, Lord, I don't want to use it," they're allowed to take that talent, give it to the bank, give it to the exchangers, give it to the Lord. You see, the church is like that. You see, if you can't use your talents, give it to the church, if you will, to use it on your behalf, so that when Christ comes, he can receive his own with gain. See, even if you aren't living the Christian life, put your energies, that's, a lot of times people talk about, well, I give my 10% to the church. I give my 10% to the church. I go to church on Sundays. I do those minimum things. I raise my family for the Lord. I preach the gospel to those who are around me. That's giving your money to the exchangers. Even though you're living your secular Christian life, you are giving your talents to the exchangers. And not only that, he gives this picture of you can live your life how you want. You don't have to live your life in Numbers chapter 26 and 27 supporting that main inheritance group, but you can still be part of the nation and be in these non-ministry positions, if you will. Non-grassroots soul winning, if you will. In these positions, you're not ungodly for going in those directions, but here's what you need to do. If you're going to become a celebrity, use that position as a celebrity to influence people for Christ. Here's the thing: is if you're going to be going into business, secular business, become a Chick-fil-A CEO, become a Dave Green family, make that museum of the Bible. Be a Ken Ham and talk about creation. Be a Ken Ham and build a giant, humongous ark, and make a theme park if you want. You can be your Mr. Dr. Dino or whatever, and so forth. Not to say that I agree with all their doctrines, but what I'm saying is they went off in a direction that is not necessarily, the Bible doesn't say go forth and make a Dr. Dino theme park or an ark encounter or a museum of the Bible or at the end of the spear. You see, these guys who typically are going into business, like the Green family, they support Christian movies that influence society. They support the Museum of the Bible that is influencing preservation of antique scripture. And then we have I forget his name, but the CEO of Chick-fil-A, who just says, we endorse marriage between a man and a woman, traditional marriage. We endorse that. And look how much influence, just making one statement in a position of authority and running his company morally, that he's not, you wouldn't think that a Chick-fil-A company would be able to get the gospel out to thousands of people. But just by making a stand or a statement as a person who's leading as a CEO in a company could influence people to realize, hey, you know, people actually stand up for the Lord around here. People actually stand up for the Bible around here. People can be salt and light in secular positions. People can be, I mean, like people are freaking out about like Dave Pratt just mentioning something about the Bible, you know, or who's the football guy who had put John 3:16 under his, you know, Tim Tebow. I mean, not that I agree with their doctrines and stuff, and I don't expect them to be theologians because their energies are focused on secular work and secular ministry. They're not, you should never go to a celebrity or a business person or anybody of those calibers in those positions for your doctrine. But I'm talking in regards to soul winning and to influencing people for Christ, to say, hey, maybe there is something more to this thing. You'd be surprised how much a celebrity, just by saying one word, can influence somebody to a product. Or why do you think the soda pop people or the Nike people have tied themselves to sports or whatever? You know, so their influence as a celebrity, you don't expect like celebrities are ultra liberal or crazy, but you see how that they endorsing a product can sell thousands and millions worth of products, and so you can see how that they going before the children of Israel can prepare the land for them. So if you're going to be a celebrity, use your position of authority in being a celebrity influence to do stuff for the Lord. You don't have to. I mean, it's as simple as like Tim Tebow sitting down and kneeling and pointing to the sky. I mean, that's not doctrinally sound. That's not a soul-winning script. But the thing is that so many people watch that in that thing that they're able to be an influence. Putting John 3:16 underneath his eyes, just to that's not proclaiming some great doctrine. That's not doing anything, but seeing on television in that verse, or like the guy who goes to the football game and holds up the sign, John 3:16. You know, that is somebody who's doing something in a secular way, but influencing it for the Lord. So if you're going to go off in that direction, being a politician, like maybe even, for example, Mike Huckabee. Again, I don't agree with these people I'm bringing up. I'm showing how that Christian people can influence a society for the Lord. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with their doctrines, or a lot of them I wouldn't agree with their doctrines on. But I'm saying that just because you're not directly involved in the local church does not mean that you are not part of the body of Christ. That you are not able to influence the world for Christ. You can still be a light and salt and light in this world, even if you are not just local. You're doing you're not that battler for the local community and at work in different places. See, that's the main inheritor. The big bulk of the Christian community is that man who raises his family for the Lord, goes to church, and goes soul winning, and witnesses to his neighbors and so forth. But if you say, hey, I have a place, you know, I have this special unique skill, and I have this special unique desire to go off into this direction that typically is not the average Christian way, but I can use it for the Lord. See, those type of people that are secular Christians, if you will, they have to use those positions in order to be blameless before the Lord, and to go before their children. In other words, they should not discourage by their role, discouraging Christians. For example, a person who claims to be a Christian music singer, when they were asked, well, you claim to be a Christian singer and you sing these songs for the Lord, what is your thoughts about homosexuality or some other thing? And all they have to do is say, I stand where the Bible stands. And that would be such a great influence to the Lord. I remember back in the day when, when Obama was president, is that it was almost like a switch was flipped. Was that beforehand, before when he was a supporter of traditional Christian marriage, and that all the politicians would say, we support traditional Christian marriage, and that was the official position of the government. Then there was one day he announces on national television, well, you know, my little daughter was asking, why can't people that love one another marry each other? And then he used that as a excuse to change the nature of the world around us by saying we're going to support homosexual marriage. And then that one statement from one guy in politics overnight changed the popular opinion of the nation. Now you see, a secular Christian in a position of, like, the same way with that Chick-fil-A CEO. We don't know anything about his doctrine or anything. All we know is that one day a reporter asked him, where do you stand on marriage? And he says, we support traditional Christian values. And then that created great controversy, but then they became, I think they're the number 2 behind McDonald's or something, chain, a fast food chain in America, because he made that one statement. And the fact that, coupled with the fact that they don't open on Sunday so they had that consistent moral stand, was a way to influence them to be treated as a Christian company and to get the business of all the Christians just by saying those 2 things. So you see how that if you have a propensity for business, a propensity for politics, or being a celebrity like David Pratt or somebody that could just, or Tim Tebow, or like a politician, a Mike Huckabee, or I mean, even like a Trump, if he were to say something positive to Christianity, even though he's morally corrupt, seems like publicly or whatever, in appearances, even that influence, that's why all these celebrity pastors, if you will, in society are gathering around him, because he has been an influence for Christianity, even in his secular compromised capacity, and so forth. And now again, I don't agree with everything that he does, but you can see where I'm going with this, is that you do not have to have, if you decide to go off into a non-traditional Christian direction, that you still need to go before your brethren and be a source for light and truth in this world. You cannot just go off on your own and like some of these Christian singers, a lot of these people get their start in Christian singing, and then they compromise on their music, and then eventually when they get popular, what do? They go off, they stop being Christian and they just become a singer. And they just go into another style and they change their image. A lady who had said, who was presented with that same question, where do you stand on marriage? Do you think these people should be allowed to get married? And she's like, well, I don't know. And she compromised. And as she compromised in her statement, she was not willing to stand with the Lord. And then because of that, she hindered her brethren. She discouraged a lot of people. She supposedly being this great Christian singer with wonderful music and stuff, and then she says, I don't know. I don't know what if God calls something an abomination. You as a Christian, even if you're not sure about a lot of things, should say, I stand with God. God says it's an abomination, I say it's an abomination. That's not to say that they're bad, or you got to stand with the Lord. You cannot just say, oh, I don't know. Because you're in that position. Because otherwise ye shall destroy all this people with your complacency. See? Verse 17 says, before the children of Israel, until we have brought them into their place. You be salt and light along with the children of Israel. Verse 20, if you will do this thing, they will, in verse 20 here it says, he said unto them, if you will do this thing, if you will go armed before the Lord to war, and will go all of you armed over Jordan before the Lord until that he hath driven out the enemies from before him, and the land subdued before the Lord. Then afterward ye shall return, and be guiltless before the Lord. Use your position in life, regardless of what it is, for the Lord. Go encourage your brethren, even if you're in secular society, and encourage them until the Lord returns. That's what your job is. Then you'll be guiltless, even though you go off in those non-traditional directions. he says here, if you'll do this thing, you'll be guiltless before the Lord and before Israel. Why does the Tim Tebow doctrine get passes? You know, why is people that want to agree with the local person on the same doctrine as Tim Tebow or be stronger on it? Well, he gets a pass because he's guiltless before the Lord and Christian society, because he's doing what he can, what little he does, to influence many people before and encourage his brethren in the Lord by being public in his pronouncements. Whereas a lot of people are liberal and a lot of people want to compromise, he makes those simple Christian decisions to go before his brethren and encourage their hearts. Oh, you're a Christian, the Tim Tebow guy's a Christian. I like Tim Tebow, therefore I like you. That's how a lot of things work in society. The lost world sees somebody they look up to, and then they will be influenced by that person's simple statements than they would be by you giving them as much doctrine as possible. You see how those things work on the heart and mind of the society. Verse 23, but if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Those compromised singers, those people that get their start as Christians, oh, I'm a Christian singer, I'm a Christian this, I'm a Christian that, and they're tagging on Christian to everything, but then they want to compromise with the world in their singing. They want to compromise with the world in a lot of things that they ought not to be by just simply stating, I'm a Christian, I stand with God on this. I may not know, even Kathy McMorris Rogers as a politician, when she was confronted with, do you believe in evolution or do you believe in a 7-day creation? She says, I believe what the Bible says. I don't know how she says, I believe it is the science and the Bible agree, and I believe that, as the Bible says, it was in 7 days, but I don't know all the doctrine surrounding whether those 7 days were literal days or not. Or she was not sure on that, and she was not going to take a stand. Evolution is false and how dare. But she stood where the Bible stood. And she said, I agree with what the Bible says. As a Christian, that's where I stand. Even though she says, I'm not sure on how all the science works out in that. It's not my job to figure all that out, she says. As a politician, I'm here to stand with Christian values. I'm here to stand with this. And those people that have the ability to study all that stuff out, they can do that. So she stood, even though she was not as strong in doctrine as we would stand, she was able to stand with the Lord and put those things where they belonged with the pastors and so forth, that she did not have to do it. Average politician that way. So we understand how that they can do that, even if they are not as strong in doctrine as the average Christian is supposed to be, because of their stated field that they decided to go in. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord. You want to try to use Christianity as a launching pad for your secular mindset and your secular attitude and your secular desires and lusts. Be sure your sin will find you out. You'll eventually be compromising yourself. You'll eventually be shown. By your fruits you shall know them. What are you producing for the Lord? Or do you produce stuff for the world and for yourself only? Or do you produce it for the Lord? Your sin will find you out. So if you're going to go off in that direction, celebrities and so forth, not live for the Lord in a victorious Christian life in a traditional way, and you're going to go off in celebrity or business or so forth, then your sin will find you out if you're just doing it as an excuse to get away from the Lord's will in your life. So we'll go with Luke chapter 19, verses 12 through 28, and then we are almost done here. A few more minutes. Luke chapter 19. He says here in Luke chapter 19, Luke chapter 19, verse 12, he said, therefore a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom, but to return, and he called his 10 servants, and delivered to them 10 pounds, and said unto them, occupy till I come. See, whatever direction you go off in life, whether it's a secular celebrity or business person or politics or live in that traditional Christian ministry, you need to occupy until you come. But his citizens hated him, and his message after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. The average worldly Christian that God created, or not Christian, but the average worldly man that God created in his image, they say, we don't like you, we're going off into our own direction, and you need to occupy until you come, even though the citizenry does not necessarily endorse God directly. But his citizens hated him and sent a message after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. It came to pass that when he was returned, having received the kingdom, then he commanded these servants to be called unto him, to whom he had given the money, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. See, we take what the Lord has given to us by trading. However, whether it's on this side of Jordan or that side of Jordan, we do it by trading. Then came first, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 10 pounds. See, you do it by trading. He wants you to be He wants you to trade. But then some people, they just sit around and not trade. They don't do anything with what God has given them. And he said unto him, well done, thou servant, because thou hast been faithful over very little, have thou authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Lord, thy pound hath gained 5 pounds. And he said likewise to him, be thou also faithful over 5 cities. And another came, saying, Lord, behold, there is thy pound, which I have kept laid up in a napkin. He sat around, did nothing. He did no trading whatsoever. For I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Oh, I don't know. God says that's an abomination, but I don't think it's an abomination. I don't know what God... I'm not going to stand with God on that, because he's an austere, mean man. He's an austere, mean God. He said unto him, out of thine own mouth, he says, I feared thee, because thou art an austere man. Thou takest up that thou layest not down, and reapest that thou hast not sown. God's not around here to win these souls for the Lord. He's not here championing our cause. Why should I go out and do something God's not doing here on this earth? You know how excuses what people do. Why Christ isn't here. He's not with his church. And he said unto him, out of thine own mouth will I judge thee, thou wicked servant. See, his sin found him out. He wasn't a true Christian. Thou knewest that I was an austere man, taking that which I laid not down, and reaping that I did not sow. Wherefore then gavest thou not my money to the bank? Even if you, as a Christian, don't want to go off in that victorious Christian life, you should give it to the bank, you should give it to the church, you should give it to somebody who will use it. Invest it. Even if you're going off secular world, invest your abilities to the glory of God to go before and encourage your brethren. See, the bank is very encouraged by people giving them money. So, not the church being very encouraged by you giving them your energies that you otherwise would not use. And he said unto them, wherefore then gavest thou not my money to the bank, that my coming might be made, might have been required at my own with usury? If you encourage your brethren, then your encouragement of the brethren, not being complacent, not just sitting around, but encouraging the brethren, that will give the brethren encouragement. When the Tim Tebow writes John 3:16 underneath his eyelids, that gives the brethren encouragement. When a CEO says, I stand for traditional marriage, that gives the brethren encouragement. When the McMorris Rogers says, hey, I don't know how all this science works out, but I stand with the Bible, that gives the brethren encouragement. You see how that works. They gave their encouragement to the exchangers so that that encouragement would build upon those people that are fighting the battle directly, encouragement to gain with usury. See how that would... See, that's the bare minimum God wants you to do. Just don't be ashamed of me in public. You know, what's the Bible say? Those that are saved in the heart, it's going to come out of the mouth. If you serve the Lord, speak it out of your mouth. He said unto them, and stood by, take from him the pound, and give it to him that hath 10 pounds. And they said unto him, Lord, he hath 10 pounds. For I say unto you that unto every man, every one which hath given shall be given, and from him that hath not, even that hath shall be taken away from him. But those mine enemies, which should not that I should reign over them, bring hither and slay them before me. And when he had said thus, he went with them, and ascending up to Jerusalem. So we need to give it to the exchangers. We need to encourage them. And we'll end with this verse, 33. And Moses gave unto them even the children of Gad, to the children of Reuben, and half the tribe, the son of Joseph. You see, you can go off in that direction if you want, and be not guiltless before the Lord. But if you do it in order for your own lusts and desires to be secret, not use it for the glory of God, then your sin will find you out. But it's not a problem if you want to go off in that direction. It's not a problem if you don't want to minister in the traditional way and go over the River Jordan. But be sure you're doing it for the glory of God, whatever it is. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, bless you again, Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to consider your word. Lord, I just pray that you'll help us understand the importance of whatever career path, whatever life decision we make, that it all ought to be used for the glory of God, and that we should buy and sell until you come, to occupy until you come, even if the citizenry hates you, that when you occupy and take over the kingdoms of this world, that you will reward your servants in glory. And just I pray. Amen.